This fall, great movies and great stars are coming to Channel 7 on the 6:30 movie. On the ABC Sunday night movies, Goldfinger, Patton, True Grit, Lawrence of Arabia. Great movies, great stars. This fall on Channel 7.
When 28-year-old Z. Friedman was killed in the Munich airport tragedy last night, his death continued a family tragedy that began back in World War II. The Olympic athlete's father said that the rest of his family had died in Nazi concentration camps. Young Z was the only one left to carry on the family name, and now, sadly enough, he too is dead. There was insane violence today on a golf course in the Virgin Islands. It seems a gunman went berserk. He killed 7 people. Later, he was unable to say why he did it. And finally, on the lighter side of the news, 55 descendants make that of Olmi Lakhdar congratulated him today on his 4th marriage. It seems that he is somewhat of a celebrity in Algeria. He said, though, that he probably won't marry again, the reason being he is 106 years old. It rained out at my place last night and again this morning. So what's the weather word, Alan?
Is that a statement or an accusation? It's kind of hard to tell. It did rain last night, and check officially, we had 1/100th inches of rain. It rained pretty good over parts of the various valleys and mountains and deserts. Most of that pattern has moved on to the east, and Hyacinth, bless her soul, her remains lie out here somewhere ignominiously off the coast, and we have seen the last of her. The humidity was quite high today, despite the low temperature, 82, 70 this morning. We ranged from a high of 87% last night back to 63, and as I mentioned earlier, that's 75% average. That is very warm, debilitating, and uncomfortable. It will improve somewhat tomorrow. Over the rest of the country, and this little front that was across here yesterday has now moved on down to the east of us. That means an increase, because of the low pressure in the desert caused by that, of more night and morning clouds and fog, and happily more sunshine and a little less humidity tomorrow. Showers and heavy thunderstorms over the upper plains with a tornado alert out for the eastern Dakotas, western Minnesota, northwestern Iowa, and the northeastern corner of Nebraska until 9 o'clock tonight. They're getting hail, high winds, and heavy rains in there. Other showers on either side of this weather system over the Great Lakes and across the Gulf to kind of complete the weather pattern. 35 at Ely, Nevada this morning. That was the cold spot in the nation. 96 at Phoenix, thus far reporting as the warmest. The satellite shows us with most of the nation on the clear side. You can see the clouds over the Rockies and across the central plains. They will be in less evidence by tomorrow. For us in the San Fernando and the San Gabriel Valley by tomorrow afternoon, the mid and upper 80s, again a little lower humidity and mostly afternoon sunshine as things start to improve toward the weekend. And from this Wednesday vantage point, it looks like a very good weekend. At Civic Center, a cloudy, muggy 67 in the morning, about 85 tomorrow afternoon. It looks like an 85 again on Friday. If you're headed for the beach, you won't have that big 12 to 20 foot surf, but it will be 4 to 6 feet with some breakers to 8, and that will be diminishing tonight and tomorrow. On the beach, temperatures in the low 70s with the water temperature at 68. If you're headed for the mountains, the upper 70s by tomorrow. They're still getting some little residual shower activity. That'll be clear and gone by tomorrow. And the upper deserts in the mid 80s, lower deserts quite cool for this time of the year. The upper 90s to right around the 100-degree mark. Throughout it all, there may be a little return of some light eye irritating smog, mostly in the central and inland portions of the basin. But other than that, a certainly vast improvement over what we had today and yesterday. John?
Thank you very much, Alan. That's Eyewitness News for now. Next, it's the ABC Evening News with Harry Reasoner and Howard K. Smith. We'll be back in 30 minutes with a 6 o'clock edition of Eyewitness News and the latest then on the manhunt in West Germany for more Arab terrorists. See you then.
Good evening. I'm Howard K. Smith in Washington. Harry Reasoner's on vacation. These are tonight's headlines. Israel, mourning its dead and angered at the killers, prepares to hold a state funeral tomorrow for the 11 Olympic team members slain in West Germany. The Olympic Games are resumed after memorial services attended by 80,000 persons are held in Munich. President Nixon directs the Secretary of State to consult with other nations on international security measures against terrorists, and both houses of Congress by unanimous vote adopt a resolution calling for world isolation of any nation encouraging terrorism. Reports tonight from Lou Cioffi on the violent climax of yesterday's Arab terrorism at the Olympics. Peter Jennings on the memorial services in Munich for 11 murdered Israelis. Ted Koppel on the State Department's initiative towards international action against terrorism. Frank Reynolds on Senator McGovern's meeting with a group of Los Angeles rabbis. David Snell on fun and work at the Southern Governors Conference. And tonight's comment on the nature of Arab terrorism. Despite a few bad decisions by judges, some disappointments and petty mistakes, the Munich Olympics were on the way to becoming the pleasantest Olympics because the West Germans worked to make them so. Today, one observer gave them a new name, the Bloody Olympics. Altogether, 17 people were slaughtered yesterday, 2 in the Olympic Village and the other 15 in the shootout at the airport. We begin a program devoted almost entirely to the Munich atrocity with a report on the shootout last night. ABC's Lou Cioffi was there.
There are still a lot of questions to be answered about what happened last night at Fürstenfeldbruck Air Base. However, the German authorities admit that they tried to ambush the guerrillas and failed. The ambush was attempted soon after the guerrillas and their hostages arrived at the airport by helicopter. There they were supposed to have boarded a German jetliner for a flight to an Arab nation. The German government says it was convinced that this would have meant certain death for the Israelis, and the decision was made to try to either disable or kill the guerrillas at the airport. They admit that police sharpshooters opened fire first. The guerrillas who were not hit then opened fire on the hostages. When it was over, all 9 Israelis were dead. 5 guerrillas were killed, 3 others captured. A German policeman also died. What made the tragedy seem even worse was the fact that for hours last night, there was a report that all of the Israelis had been liberated, a report which was not denied at the time. German authorities blame poor communications with the airbase, which was completely sealed off. One newspaper summed it up by saying, "Whatever the truth about the tragic events of last night, Germany will emerge a loser." Lou Cioffi, ABC News, Munich.
The games were suspended yesterday as the crisis deepened. Late this morning they were resumed, but only after a hugely attended memorial service for the members of the Israeli team who died. ABC's Peter Jennings reports.
On most days, this stadium holds 80,000 eager track and field fans. Today, instead, they came to a memorial service, an hour of memory for 11 fellow athletes from Israel, slain yesterday during an abortive attempt by Palestinian guerrillas to gain the release of Arabs held prisoner in Israel. The Munich Philharmonic chose Beethoven's Eroica Symphony with which to begin. The surviving members of the Israeli Olympic team. Tomorrow, they will return home. Representatives from almost all of the 122 countries participating here. Arab athletes did not attend, though in many cases because they were bound by political restraints over which they had no control. In what can only be called a state of shock and devastation, thousands of Germans who had seen their games of serenity turned overnight into the Olympics of terror. It fell to the Israeli team's chief delegate to offer a slim hope that the games could be serene again sometime in the future.
I should like to solemnly confirm here that the athletes of Israel will continue to participate in the Olympic competitions in a spirit of brotherhood and fairness, despite this abominable crime. It is in deep sorrow that the Israeli delegation leaves the Federal Republic of Germany today.
After the president of Germany spoke, Avery Brundage, the president of the International Olympic Committee, echoed what was really the majority sentiment here.
We have only the strength of a great ideal. I'm sure the public will agree that we cannot allow a handful of terrorists to destroy this nucleus of international cooperation and goodwill. The games must go on.
10 days ago, when the 20th Olympiad began, this stadium was a riot of color, proud and beaming faces from around the world. As the Munich Philharmonic concluded with the Egmont Overture by Beethoven, hearts and minds today were heavy with the thought that something was wrong with mankind. Peter Jennings, ABC News, at the 20th Olympiad.
Munich has the well-earned reputation of being one of the most pleasant and pleasure-seeking cities in Germany, or indeed in the world. That's why the Germans wanted the Olympics there, to soften the memory of Hitler's Iron Olympics of 1936 in Berlin. Yesterday's events left a pall, but it won't last. ABC's Lou Cioffi again.
A lot of the spirit has obviously disappeared from these Olympic Games, but the form at least is continuing. The official 24-hour period of mourning has ended, and the athletes moved out of Olympic Village to the various training and playing fields. Although the Egyptian team, and naturally the Israelis, have withdrawn from the Games, there's no indication that any of the other nations plan to leave. They apparently have all decided to abide by the ruling of the International Olympic Committee that the Games should not be stopped. Most of the athletes agreed, and certainly most of the people of Munich who've been working for this event so hard and for so long. In the city of Munich itself, all of the flags are flying at half-mast, and many of them are hung with black bunting. The newspaper headlines tell of the shocking events of the past 24 hours. In front of stores, small crowds gathered to watch TV sets during the commemorative ceremony that was held today in the Olympic Stadium. And while the people of Munich were obviously shocked and saddened by what happened, that feeling is slowly beginning to wear off. The sidewalk cafes were crowded today as people took advantage of a bright sun that shone down on the city. Tourists walked through the main square sightseeing and taking pictures. And even the scalpers were back on the streets with their assortment of tickets to Olympic events that were going for 5 and even 10 times the regular admission price. Lou Cioffi, ABC News, Olympic Village.
Israeli reaction to the killings, that and other stories in a moment.
Your body, when you put anything in it, think about your health. Even when you take medicine for occasional headaches. No leading headache tablet is unhealthy used properly, but Bufferin is better. It not only ensures you get the pain reliever doctors specify most, it's the only leading tablet with ingredients to make it go to work faster and help prevent the stomach upset aspirin can cause. When you put anything in your body, think about your health. Bufferin does.
If you like buttery pancakes and buttery corn, you'll love Home Pride Buttertop White Bread. It tastes buttery even before you butter it. We pour on the butter so it bakes right in.
Home Pride White sounds great, but I like wheat bread.
Then try Home Pride's new Buttertop Wheat Bread, a delicious blend of whole wheat.
Topped with creamery butter.
Home Pride Buttertop Enriched White Bread and new Home Pride Buttertop Wheat.
Most of the non-Arab world was still expressing shock today over the Munich massacre. Even Jordan, for the second day straight, denounced the action, saying, quote, "It was an ugly crime which has served to destroy the Arab cause." In Israel, Prime Minister Golda Meir expressed her government's appreciation for West Germany's action in trying to free the Israeli victims. Even so, in Tel Aviv, there were protest demonstrations outside the West German embassy. Associated Press reported late today that Israel has asked the United States to withdraw from the remainder of the Olympics in protest against the decision to continue the competition. There was no immediate word of response. One of the victims of the Munich attack was David Berger, a native of Cleveland, Ohio, who was a member of the Israeli weightlifting team. We have a report from Bill Baker of WEWS-TV, Cleveland.
Flags in Cleveland and the entire state of Ohio were ordered to half-staff in honor of 28-year-old David Berger. The Jewish athlete grew up in the affluent Cleveland suburb of Shaker Heights. He moved to Israel 3 years ago, according to his parents, in order to find the reality of life. David had dual citizenship. His boyhood room is filled with trophies and mementos of his weightlifting skill. David's father, Dr. Benjamin Berger, met briefly with reporters after an all-night vigil of television reports and overseas phone calls that eventually brought the news of his son's fate. After a great deal of soul-searching, Dr. Berger held the German government responsible for not adequately protecting the athletes.
I think the initial security in the village was poor. They didn't supply the security necessary, and I think that the Israelis depended in large part on the German government for their own security. It certainly was an error.
Dr. Berger does not believe in an eye for an eye and does not wish for more violence.
I think what I really hope is that the Israeli government doesn't take specific actions. I feel that anybody needlessly killed in any type of war is crime, and I see nothing gained by the Israeli government assuming reprisals against Lebanon or Syria or Egypt. I think absolutely nothing would come of that.
Dr. Berger feels the Olympic Games must continue so the disruptive goals of the Arab guerrillas are not achieved. For ABC News, this is Bill Baker in Shaker Heights, Ohio.
A final note from Munich. Last week, American Rick DeMont won the gold medal in the 400-meter freestyle swimming event. Today, the International Olympic Committee took the medal away. DeMont, who has asthma, was disqualified for taking ephedrine, an asthma medication which is on the list of drugs banned by the Olympic Committee. In the U.S., President Nixon today ordered tighter security for Israeli citizens in this country and for others who might be the targets of Arab terrorists. The White House refused to discuss what specific measures will be taken, but the executive machinery is already in operation. ABC diplomatic correspondent Ted Koppel reports.
The administration's eagerness to demonstrate decisive reaction took a variety of forms. A uniformed subsidiary of the Secret Service was instructed to strengthen security measures around the Israeli, West German, and several Arab diplomatic missions. But the United States is still struggling with the much more complex question of how to translate diplomatic outrage into effective international action. By coincidence, the International Civil Aviation Organization is meeting at the State Department this week. They're dealing strictly with the question of hijacking, but for Secretary of State Rogers, it was a convenient forum to react to the Munich incident.
It seems almost beyond our comprehension that action can't be taken to stop these acts. The government of the United States is prepared to take the most firm, severe action that the international community is prepared to join in.
At the Israeli embassy here in Washington, visitors signed a memorial guest book, while upstairs, just before a late afternoon meeting with Secretary Rogers, Ambassador Yitzhak Rabin stressed the need for immediate international action.
I believe that there are enough free democratic countries that can find effective means to bring home to those individuals, to those organizations, to those countries that still offer freedom of action to these insane terrorists, and to make it clear to them in practical terms that unless they do something, they are going to suffer.
For the Israelis, the alternatives are limited. If they are to refrain from reprisal, they must be reasonably confident that their restraint won't be interpreted as a sign of weakness. And unless the rest of the world is willing to back its rhetoric with action, the Israelis will be left to their own devices again. This is Ted Koppel, ABC News, outside the Israeli embassy.
I'll have more news in a moment.
I just got the nicest compliment from this son-in-law of mine. He said that by looking at me, he can tell how beautiful Judy's going to be in 20 years.
Well, I really mean it.
Oh, Jim. Well, it does pay to take care of yourself. I exercise, eat right, and to make sure I get enough iron and vitamins, I take Geritol every morning. Judy does, too.
Geritol, more than twice the iron of ordinary supplements, plus 7 vitamins. Take care of yourself. Take Geritol.
Mom, you're incredible.
Some nights, my Jerry has a hard time getting to sleep, and the next morning he feels really tired. I can tell. Well, you know what I did? I got him to try Salmonex. Salmonex is really good. Now when he has trouble falling asleep, Salmonex helps him relax and feel drowsy.
A good night's sleep does make a difference, and Salmonex can help you get it.
After a good night's sleep, not only does he feel all rested and refreshed, he really looks it.
Congress reacted today to the killings in Munich. Both houses unanimously passed a resolution calling for the isolation of countries that harbor terrorists. Senator McGovern told the Southern California Board of Rabbis today that Egypt and Lebanon are to blame for the 11 Israeli deaths. McGovern was campaigning in Los Angeles last night when he got word of the killings. ABC's Frank Reynolds reports.
At an outdoor rally last night, a highly partisan crowd, expecting a partisan speech, instead was given a sermon by a politician who was once a minister.
This is not a good night for a political speech. It is a night for quiet contemplation on the part of human beings all around this world. I have no careful solutions to offer. I don't have anything strikingly new to say, but what does need to be said with new force tonight is stop the killing. Stop the killing everywhere around the world.
This morning, McGovern spoke to a group of rabbis. One challenged him to say whether he really meant to compare terrorists in Munich with American pilots in Vietnam.
What I was trying to do, Rabbi, was to express my own horror and indignation over the kind of killing that is taking place in various parts of the world, but especially in Vietnam. My conscience can't live with the kind of pictures we had in the press here a few weeks ago, these little children running from a bombed-out school. Now, I know that the pilot that dropped that napalm is on a different moral level than the terrorist who killed those young men in Munich on yesterday. I personally can't live with the kind of situation that we now have in Southeast Asia, where tens of thousands of innocent people are being killed, however inadvertently, by an American military involvement that I think is against the best traditions of this country and which I think are not in the interest of the people of Vietnam.
This is Frank Reynolds, ABC News, Los Angeles.
I'll be back with more news in a moment.
Four beautiful new cars from Subaru. The two-door sedan, the new four-door, the station wagon, and the Subaru GL Coupe. Every Subaru has front-wheel drive and rack and pinion steering. They really handle. They've got the power to cruise at high speed and deliver up to 30 miles per gallon on regular. Subaru, for people who know all about imports, for people who never considered one.
Open a jar? Simple. Except when arthritis flares up. With pain and its stiffness. For help, reach for Anacin. With the pain reliever, doctors prescribe most for arthritis. When even simple movement can cause pain, Anacin relieves minor pain, and so eases stiffness for hours. Brings more freedom of movement without pain. Minutes after taking Anacin, the joy of doing simple things returns. Anacin.
I wish there were an easier way to get these walls clean.
Now there is Big Wally, the new foaming action wall washer. Big Wally gets down under the dirt and lifts it right off the wall.
Big Wally cleans without all that mixing and scrubbing.
And no rinsing.
One can does all four walls fast.
Big Wally lifts the dirt right off the wall.
When we bought that big old house, the paneling looked so dull and dingy. But new Liquid Regard saved us.
Liquid Regard conditions. Its organic oil restores the beauty of paneling, even helps hide scratches. Liquid Regard also removes stubborn dirt with ease and gives cabinets a new glow.
Regard gave our wood paneling a beautiful new look.
New Liquid Regard, wood panel conditioner.
The Southern Governors Conference has been in session this week on Hilton Head Island in South Carolina. Today, the conference elected Alabama Governor George Wallace as chairman and Governor Melvin Evans of the Virgin Islands, a black man, as vice chairman. The governors have worked on issues, but their prime interest has been politics. ABC's David Snell, who has spent 3 days with the Southern Governors, reports on what's been happening.
In their work sessions, the governors discussed such things as land use and law enforcement, environment and education. But most of their time was taken up with play and a bit of politics. The play was about equally divided between golf and tennis, where Oklahoma's David Hall had the best serve, Florida's Ruben Askew the best ground strokes. Politically, attention was focused on the presidential campaign by the appearance Sunday night of Senator George McGovern. He had come, he said, to renew acquaintances, which he did in private before talking to newsmen.
I didn't ask for any commitments. No one said they wouldn't endorse me either.
What no one told McGovern on Sunday night seemed implicit in the statements of most governors during the next 3 days. A few did promise support, but none predicted the senator would win a southern state.
Anywhere in the South that I'm informed and listening to the informed people, the senator's in trouble in the South, in deep trouble.
It's very difficult to say right now what's going to happen on November 7th. I don't think there's any question but what the gap's going to be closer than it was that it's showing in polls right now. It's a tremendous gap to close, though.
I think it's highly unlikely that Nixon could lose any of the Deep South states.
Alabama's George Wallace, eliminated from the presidential sweepstakes by a bullet in Laurel, Maryland, declined to predict or endorse, but indicated he would, or at least might.
I'm sure that I'll take a position. Of course, the position might be that I won't take a position, you know, but...
The man most happy with the vibrations here this week was the president's top advisor on Southern politics, Harry Dent.
Well, they haven't been jumping on the McGovern bandwagon, and for one prime reason. They can't find anybody in the South, particularly, who is for George McGovern. It's a very unpopular thing to do. It would be kind of a kamikaze suicide mission to get out front of the George McGovern bandwagon, because it isn't going anywhere in the South.
The political bandwagon that does seem to be going somewhere in the South, or at least its first trumpet, descended on Hilton Head last night. Vice President Agnew exuding confidence but refusing to proclaim the South in the Republican bag.
George McGovern says that he intends to wage a national campaign, that he has not written off the South. But the word from this conference is that with only a few exceptions, the governors have written it off for him, that most of them intend to watch the national campaign from the safety of the sidelines. David Snell, ABC News, Hilton Head, South Carolina.
I'll have more news in a moment.
Here you are. Oh, hi, I'm Arlene Francis. Oh, today was made for heartburn, indigestion. What do I do about it? Look, 3 leading antacids, 2 roll types, and 1 little tablet. But this little Phillips tablet is concentrated, so it consumes more acid than either of the others. Oh, I know I have lots of days like today. When it happens to you, why don't you do what I do? Take the little ones, Phillips tablets. They're packed with strength.
What a lovely way to start the morning, cool and clean, and you stay fresh all day. Yes, that's the way it is when you use Dial. Aren't you glad you use Dial? Don't you wish everybody did? Aren't you glad you use Dial?
In other news, there was heavy fighting in 3 areas of South Vietnam today between government and communist troops. South Vietnamese forces continued their slow, difficult drive to oust North Vietnamese troops from a bunker complex in Quang Tri. 100 miles to the south, communist troops overran a strategic hill 10 miles from the Quay San Valley. That valley is the gateway to Da Nang. In the air war, Navy fighter bombers ranged along the North Vietnamese coast from Hai Phong to about 200 miles to the south, leaving supply dumps, fuel dumps, and barracks in flames. Iceland, in an effort to protect its cod fishing industry, has expanded its ban on foreign fishing boats from a 12-mile limit offshore to 60 miles offshore. British and West German boats, who have for a long time fished in waters now off limits, have defied the ban. Yesterday, an Icelandic Coast Guard boat cut the trawler lines of a British boat, and the British ambassador protested. Today, Iceland rejected the protest. So far, the Icelanders have shown restraint in that they have not carried out threats to board offending foreign vessels and to arrest the crews. In Santiago, Chile today, police used nightsticks, tear gas, and water cannon to break up fights between police and high school students protesting against the left-wing government of President Allende. Last night, in a major policy speech, Allende said that Chile will be wrecked if his government's overthrown. I'll have tonight's comment in a moment.
If men were all the same and all they wanted was a really well-built shoe for the lowest possible price, we'd have it easy at JCPenney. But men are anything but all the same. So this is what we've done. We've put all our famous JCPenney value into tough harness boots. Handsome side zip boots, just $18.99. New looks like high heels, two-tones, suedes, hikers from $12.99, and hundreds more. Each one built as if it were the only JCPenney shoe. No matter who you are, we know what you're looking for.
This is an important election not only for me, but for those of you in this city.
Our candidate is confident she won't be embarrassed by loose dentures when she talks, because Orifix denture adhesive holds and keeps holding to help her speak clearly.
As for my honorable opponent, well, I'd like to make this crystal clear.
Our ingenious ingredient helps spread Orifix evenly so you get a tight seal that holds your dentures.
Thank you very
Orifix helps you speak clearly without embarrassment. Use Orifix, the seal of confidence.
The atrocity that slashed the face of the Olympics yesterday produced all sorts of apocalyptic comments, some of them mine, about a sick, worsening world with mad men out of control. Well, a sober second-day reading suggests that the opposite may be truer. The incident was kamikaze in nature, what the Japanese did when all was lost and they knew it, and only the suicidal, pseudo-heroic gesture remained, the fanatics urged to meet death with a bang and not a whimper. What will be the practical effects? Will it make Israel soften? 1,000 times no, quite the opposite. For a while yesterday, there were fears it would stop the Olympic Games, but it hasn't. That deprives the gesture of a wider grandeur its perpetrators no doubt hoped for. Will it intensify the Arabs' resolve for a new trial of arms with Israel? Well, in the Middle East, you can't be sure, but I doubt it. When Hussein destroyed his guerrillas, when Sadat expelled the Russians, both tacitly opted for negotiation. Without the guerrillas' fanaticism and without the Russian army, force is impossible. Every sign is Hussein and Sadat are moving towards a settlement, though doing it octopus-like, covering retreat from force with a cloud of defiant ink. Admittedly, the crisis has lasted in the Middle East so long it may be a while a-dying, so there may be more kamikaze gestures. But in the end, sheer weariness with a crisis that has long outlasted any national interest is going to prevail in the Middle East, as it will in Vietnam. That's tonight's news, and to comment, I'm Howard K. Smith. Good night.
This has been a presentation of ABC News.
This is ABC. John Wayne stars tonight at 6:30.
A search for additional Arab terrorists is going on tonight in West Germany as an investigation begins into the bloodbath at the Olympic Games in Munich.
The Olympic Games resume in Munich after a 24-hour delay as services are held in various parts of the world to mourn the loss of the 11 Israelis.
This is Eyewitness News, the 6 o'clock report, with John Schubeck, Chuck Henry, and the Eyewitness News team.
The 20th Olympic Games paused for a somber tribute this morning to the 11 Israeli athletes murdered by Palestinian Arab terrorists. Thousands of athletes, coaches, and spectators sat quietly in the track and field stadium in Munich. The Olympic torch burned brightly, but flags hung at half-staff. As one comrade of the slain athletes commented, the attack was a rape of the Olympic spirit. Since before noon yesterday, there was a lot of doubt as to whether or not the Olympic competition would resume following yesterday's Arab terrorist attacks. The story from Stu Nahan. Stu?
Well, John, that question was answered early today during the memorial services at the Olympic Stadium. 84-year-old Avery Brundage, the retiring president of the International Olympic Committee, offered this statement.
Every civilized person recoils in horror at the barbarous criminal intrusion of terrorists into peaceful Olympic precincts. We mourn our Israel friends, victims of this brutal assault. The Olympic flag and the flags of all the world fly at half-mast. The games must go on, and we must continue our efforts to keep them clean, pure, and honest.
As the games prepared to resume, and they'll run through Monday now, there were several withdrawals. Israel pulled out, of course, and there was a report tonight that Israel filed a request with the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv asking that the American team also withdraw in protest of the games being continued.